Brothers and sisters, let's pay respect to Lompa by bowing 3 times. Bow.
So, good afternoon, everyone. I hope you're all well nourished and you've all laid your hunger and ready for an afternoon of meditation, reflection. I'm going to read from a couple of short sutras in a moment, and and the theme of these sutras is about refining gold. And the reason I quite like these particular sutras, because what they're saying that gold, when it has impurities, right, it doesn't shine. It's brittle. You can't mold it into sort of shapes and things. You can't do much with it, right? But when you remove the impurities from it, then it shines and it's malleable, and you can make it into all sorts of nice shapes. And the Buddha said the same about the mind. That potentially the mind can be like pure gold, but it's accumulated impurities. So because of that, it doesn't. It's sometimes not malleable or radiant, and can be put to whatever use that we wish to. So I just thought, for yourselves, do you have confidence that your real nature is pure gold? that your real nature is the Buddha nature, you might say, or purity, yeah? Do you have that confidence? And have you ever met somebody who you feel manifests that pure gold? Yeah, just interesting to, and generally in the world, people are looking for gold out there, aren't they? And who are the happiest people you've met? Maybe you might consider. So there's some people in the world that amassed great amounts of gold. The billionaires and the very wealthy people. Maybe we don't know them, we never met them. But I wonder how they are as a person, yeah? One of the inspirations for myself was back in 1979, when I was a layman going to the Hampstead Vihara in London, where Ajahn Sumedho lived at that time before he moved to Chithurst. Ajahn Chah came to visit. He came stay for a few days. And that was really quite an inspiration to meet Ajahn Chah. In terms of, he was such a joyful being. I never quite seen somebody who just emanated his sense of joy. Yeah? And strangely enough, this was, I'd only been practicing meditation for less than a year then, it was mainly just enjoying pain and restlessness in those days, but I was determined to keep at it, But when Ajahn Chah came, he sat with us, my mind became more peaceful. So I used to go there once a week on a Sunday night. But when Ajahn Chah came, I went every night. Because I thought, this is very interesting, just to be around him and experience this sort of peacefulness. And interesting, even one evening, because people came to see him, he didn't come up into the shrine room. But I still found the same peace, even though he's downstairs. And then Ajahn Chah left, and it all started up again. But it was a good experience, a good taste of something, and just a sense of, being around somebody who was great of such purity, So after one evening of meditation, we used to give a talk, and then we'd go downstairs and have tea. And then sometimes Ajahn Chah would ask you questions. So he asked me a question. He said, what do you think it would be like to sit there for a whole hour without a single thought coming into your mind? He asked me that question. And my reply was, I was, very enlightened, right? And Ajahn Chah said, like a stone? I think he got the sense I was always trying to get rid of my thoughts, But the nature of mind is to think sometimes, isn't it? So that was a good lesson I could reflect on. But, over the years I've met many great, what I would call great monks, And they have different characters, Some more maybe external calm sort of character. Some are really fiery, Like there was one of the masters called Ajahn Mahabua. Have you heard of Ajahn Mahabua? He passed away now. He was quite a fierce character, And it was interesting that when, back in England in the 70s, there was a gentleman called George Sharp, and he was on the English Sangha Trust. And he was really keen to have a Sangha in England. He really felt it really would benefit to have a Sangha. And the first monk he met was Ajahn Panyawado, who was like a disciple. He was an English monk, a disciple of Ajahn Mahabua. So George went to Thailand to see if he could invite Ajahn Panyawado to come and start a Sangha in England. And but Ajahn Mahabua didn't think things were suitable yet to have a Sangha there. And he'd been to Hampstead Vihara in 77, and he didn't think it was a suitable place for monks to stay long term. But the thing about Ajahn Mahabua, because he was quite fierce, George thought he was really grumpy. So when he was being interviewed when he was having a talk when he was asking Ajahn Mahabua questions, he asked Ajahn Mahabua, "Why are you so grumpy?" I think that must have been a challenge for a translator, asking Mahabua, "Why are you so grumpy?" Ajahn Mahabua's response, was to smile and say, "It's just my nature, It's just who I am, It's like, sometimes people think enlightenment, you become sort of the prototype. But, you don't lose the sort of character, but it's, you've got a perspective, you're not clinging to it anymore. So I met many monks, some have a more sort of calm demeanor, some people are more energetic and come over a bit fierce sometimes. But one thing I always notice about some of these monks is whatever their character is, I always feel a sense of peace around them. This is my way I judge it, even though the superficial character can be quite fierce. On another level, I feel this sort of peace. And so when we went to Ajahn Panyawada's funeral, the monks, we all arrived, and the group of us Western monks who came from Wat Pa Nanachat, as we arrived, we bumped into Lungta Mahabua, and he was talking to us, and we all bowed down, on our knees when we saw him, a great monk, and he said something. He always come over. His delivery was always quite strong, actually, but I couldn't understand what he was saying. Right? But after I heard, he was telling us off. So bowing to him in that sort of situation. But I didn't feel that. I didn't feel any anger or anything. I just felt peace around him, but he was telling us off. Anyway, but anyway, when Ajahn Chah came to England, he was always, it reminds me actually of something that the Buddha said about Sariputta, Sariputta could, just like somebody like a king could choose which clothes he wears. He could wear this coat this morning and that coat the next morning. So Sariputta, if he wanted to manifest loving kindness, he could. If he wanted to manifest this, he could. He could just manifest what mind state he wished because he was an enlightened being. And so Ajahn Chah, when he came to England, was just a ball of like loving kindness, and humorous and trying to encourage us. But if you actually live with him in Thailand, you hear some quite different stories. He could be really fierce and really intimidating. And you couldn't imagine that when you saw him in England. But it was just his skillful means, And like there's a book by a man called Paul Breiter, who wrote about his experiences with Ajahn Chah. He says, sometimes you just wanted to be around him all the time, and sometimes you just wanted to get away from him, Because sometimes he put on the persona of a grumpy old man, and sometimes he was just so loving, But no, he just used it, as a skillful means to teach people, not to get attached to him, but to realize the Dhamma. Yeah. But anyway, meeting these great monks for me has been a great inspiration. And this is why, this idea of somebody who's realized the pure gold, of the heart. There was another monk, he was a disciple of Ajahn Mahabua, but he was a really coarse character. His name was Lumpo Jia. And, he used to really be fierce. He used to throw things at people, yeah? But Lungta Mahabua said, he's rough on the outside, but on the inside he's pure gold. So yeah, another one, it's just his character, Yeah. So I thought I'd read these a couple of suttas. Yeah. So this is from the Book of Threes in the Anguttara Nikaya. This is Sutta 101, and it's called the Soil Remover. Bhikkhus, there are gross defilements of gold, that is, soil, grit, and gravel. Now the soil remover, or his apprentice, first pours the gold into a trough, and washes, rinses, and cleans it. When that has been removed and eliminated, there still remains middle-sized defilements in the gold, that is, fine grit and coarse sand. The soil remover or his apprentice washes, rinses, and cleans it again. When that has been removed and eliminated, there still remain subtle defilements in the gold, that is, fine sand and black dust. So the soil remover or his apprentice washes, rinses, and cleans it again. When that has been removed and eliminated, only grains of gold remain. The goldsmith, or his apprentice, now pours the gold into a melting pot, and fans it, melts it, and smelts it. But even when this has been done, the gold is not yet settled, and the dross has not yet been entirely removed. The gold is not yet malleable, wieldy, and luminous, but still brittle and not properly fit for work. But as the goldsmith or his apprentice continues to fan, melt, and smelt the gold, a time comes when the gold is settled and the dross has been entirely removed, so that the gold becomes malleable, wieldy, and luminous, pliant, and properly fit for work. Then, whatever kind of ornament the goldsmith wishes to make from it, whether a bracelet, a earring, a necklace, or a golden garland, he can achieve his purpose. So too, bhikkhus, when a bhikkhu is devoted to the higher mind, there are in him gross defilements, bodily, verbal, and mental misconduct. An earnest, capable bhikkhu abandons, dispels, terminates, and obliterates them. So you could say that the bodily and verbal and mental, especially bodily and verbal about precepts, keeping precepts. Yeah? When this has been done, there remain in him middling defilements, that are sensual thoughts, thoughts of ill will, and thoughts of harming. An earnest, capable bhikkhu abandons, dispels, terminates, and obliterates them. When this has been done, there remain in him subtle defilements, thoughts about his relations, thoughts about his country, and thoughts about his reputation. An earnest, capable bhikkhu abandons, dispels, terminates, and obliterates them. When this has been done, then there remain thoughts connected with the Dhamma. That concentration is not peaceful and sublime, not gained by full tranquilization, not attained to unification, but is reined in and checked by forcefully suppressing defilements. But bhikkhus, there comes a time when his mind becomes internally steady, composed, unified, and concentrated. That concentration is peaceful and sublime, gained by full tranquilization and attained to unification. It is not reined in and checked by forcefully suppressing the defilements. Then, because there is now a suitable basis, he is capable of realizing any state realizable by direct knowledge towards which he might incline his mind. The sutta then actually starts to go through all the different sort of psychic abilities, like reading minds and remembering past lives and different things that one can actually put the mind to. But finishing with the most important thing is like freeing the heart from what we call the asava or taints. Yeah. So this is the gradual purification of the mind, from the gross to the subtle. Now, it's not saying we should never have thoughts about our relatives, about our country, about our reputation, but it's just that when we're meditating, can we put maybe these worldly thoughts down a bit? We have to come back to them, but just during the time of meditation, to try and put aside, worldly concerns. This is what really the message here. It's not that we don't, you can't go through life not considering our relatives, but it's just during our time of meditation. Because, maybe this is how maybe subtle worries and anxieties can manifest in the mind. So it's good to know what is the underlying mind state that's giving rise to these thoughts about reputation and family. Is it worries and anxieties? So this is what we have to understand. And when we decide not to buy into these thoughts, then we understand more about where they're coming from. And it's good to be able to consider our life without the worries and without the anxieties, but from a clarity of mind. Yeah? So during meditation, these sort of thoughts we abandon, try not to get caught into all the worries and say reputation, family things, and But then, of course, it's good to reflect on the Dhamma, yeah? But still, even reflecting on Dhamma, as it says here, is not the most sublime state, but it's conducive. It's conducive if our thoughts are correct, in line with the Dhamma, then this will be the conducive towards a deeper deep into meditation. But like it says here, eventually those tend to drop away naturally, because our thoughts are not the thoughts that are keeping defilements going. The mind naturally becomes more calm, and then the need to think actually drops away. So even the Dharma thoughts will drop away, and that's when the mind becomes more sublime, more refined. Yeah? So this is a sort of a natural process, and this is what it's saying in this sutta. Right. So what we experience is just normal, you know. So don't despair about, you know, these different defilements. We have to just learn to be aware of them, understand them, and let them go. You know, see how we tend to hold on to them and let them go. I'm going to jump to the next sutta now. This is called the Goldsmith, right? Bhikkhus. When a bhikkhu is devoted to the higher mind, from time to time he should give attention to 3 marks. 1. From time to time he should give attention to the mark of concentration. 2. From time to time to the mark of exertion. And 3. From time to time to the mark of equanimity. If a bhikkhu devoted to the higher mind attends exclusively to the mark of concentration, it is possible that his mind will veer towards laziness. If he attends exclusively to the mark of exertion, it is possible that his mind will veer towards restlessness. If he attends exclusively to the mark of equanimity, it is possible that his mind will not be properly concentrated for the destruction of the taints. So they're like defilements. Yeah? But when a bhikkhu, devoted to the higher mind, from time to time gives attention to the mark of concentration, from time to time to the mark of exertion, and from time to time to the mark of equanimity, his mind becomes malleable, wieldy, and luminous, pliant, and properly concentrated for the destruction of the taints. Suppose, bhikkhus, a goldsmith or his apprentice would prepare a furnace, heat up the crucible, take some gold with tongs and put it into the crucible. Then from time to time he will blow on it, from time to time sprinkle water over it, and from time to time just look on. If the goldsmith or his apprentice were to exclusively blow on the gold, it is possible that the gold would just burn up. If he were to exclusively sprinkle water on the gold, it is possible the gold would cool down. If he were exclusively to just look on, it is possible the gold would not reach the right consistency. But if the goldsmith or his apprentice from time to time blows on it, from time to time sprinkles water over it, and from time to time just looks on, the gold will become malleable, wieldy and luminous, pliant and properly fit for work. Then whatever kind of ornament the goldsmith wishes to make from it, whether a bracelet, earrings, a necklace or golden garland, he can achieve his purpose. So too, when a bhikkhu is devoted to the higher mind, from time to time he shall give attention to 3 marks. From time to time he shall give attention to the mark of concentration. From time to time to the mark of exertion. And from time to time to the mark of equanimity. So I find this teaching quite helpful in meditation. No? Because you know, when we're developing meditation, we've got to see what's needed for what we're experiencing. So it's not just a blind sort of just doing one thing, right? So if we're meditating and we get sleepy, if we try to watch our breath, what happens? If you feel sleepy, you try to watch your breath, what happens? Well, you probably fall asleep, wouldn't you? Yeah, it's not really, watching the breath when you're sleepy is not the practice to do, right? So concentration practice is not the best at that time. So more bringing up effort or energy, exertion, is more what is the remedy for sloth and torpor. So this might mean, bringing up a theme of contemplation in our meditation, something to bring energy into the mind. So I had a period in my, meditation that, I just sit down and go to sleep. It just became like that. I just sit down and I was quite calm, but I just nod off. And fortunately, the head monk there pointed it out to me. He could notice from my posture that I wasn't quite alert and awake. And so I really had to work on how to bring energy into the mind. And so what I used to do, I used to memorize verses from the Dhammapada and memorize certain of the teachings and recite these, rather than just go to the breath. And that really helped to sort of dispel the sleepiness. Yeah. But if I'd have just done Anapanasati, then I'd have, fallen asleep. But of course, when the mind's restless, agitated, then of course that's the Anapanasati, isn't it? That really helps to calm the mind down. So this is, we say, mindfulness also has to be balanced with some sort of clear comprehension. We call it sati and sampajanya. And sampajanya is noticing the quality of mind and what might be a suitable meditation to help with what we're experiencing, to dispel the hindrance we're experiencing, whether it be restlessness or agitation or sloth and torpor. And it's finding that sort of balance between what we say, concentration and energy. When the balance is right, then there's a clear awareness in the present. So recently somebody asked me, he's not quite sure. He feels quite peaceful in the meditation, but he doesn't really know if he's really, alert, He doesn't, you get it. Because, think about sloth and torpor, it'd be quite peaceful, can't it? Oh, just peaceful. It's like a peaceful experience, so you just sort of sink into it in a way, can't you? Yeah. So I said, well, if you want to really judge how much clarity your mind has, then try counting your breaths. Yeah. If you can count from 1 to 10 quite easily, then the concentration's there. But if there's sloth and torpor there, you won't be, you tend to lose it. You get it to about 1 or 2 and 3, and then you slip away. So this is a good test. You can just see if you can count your breaths quite easily from 1 to 10. Breathe in, breathe out 1, breathe in, breathe out 2. So that's a good test if the mind has found that balance between concentration and energy. But I find also sometimes, just the mind's a bit restless, but trying to focus on the breath, and I just feel it seems to make things worse, And sometimes I found that just to practice more is just observing the mind, just being with, trying to maintain awareness and cultivating this other quality of equanimity. Try to be just equanimous with the comings and goings of the mind, not trying to focus on anything in particular, but just observing whatever the mind's doing. Sometimes I sit in the kuti, and just look out at the nature outside the kuti and just allow things to be, allow the mind to think, thoughts come and going, but just practicing more equanimity with it. But of course, if you did that all the time, the Buddha said the mind doesn't get that sharpness. You need more of that focus sometimes to get the sharpness. Just if you did that all the time, the Buddha said the mind wouldn't be perfectly poised for the abandoning of defilements. Yeah. Again, too much effort in meditation to get rid of thoughts just creates more. It makes the mind, too much exertion, like it says, makes the mind more restless. So, yeah, so it's always finding that balance of effort. So there is an effort to, when we're restless, to focus on the breath, but it's knowing how to balance the effort. And I was saying before about, allowing thoughts to come and go, but just observing that more, but inclining towards the breath. And remembering Ajahn Chah's teaching about not trying to be like a stone. That, you're trying to develop wisdom, and wisdom comes to experiencing, to observing, understanding the mind, understanding thoughts. And then Ajahn Chah, in one of his teachings, said that to expect the mind to stop thinking is not. You can't expect that. He said it's like expecting a monkey to be still. Expecting the mind just to be still is like expecting a monkey to be still. But he said, but what we can do, we can observe the monkey. And if we understand the monkey, then a nice expression, he says, if we understand the monkey, then we're not the monkey. Because if we understand the monkey, we learn to observe the monkey. Yeah. And then he said, when we understand one monkey, we understand all monkeys. And then monkey's not a problem anymore, because we understand this is the way a monkey is. So we don't suffer over monkeys. Yeah. So the same with the mind, understanding the mind. The mind sometimes restless, jumping around, but that's the way the mind is. Yeah? We can't expect it always to be still and how we want it to be. But we can observe. We can more peacefully observe the nature of the mind. So that Ajahn Chah said, yes, if we're observing the monkey, then we're not the monkey anymore. And then we don't suffer over the monkey, because we understand the way the monkey is. Yeah. So, these are, I found good guidelines for meditation, trying to balance between concentration and energy. I say when I'm getting a bit mind bonded to dullness, sleepiness, to bring up energy. When the mind's more restless, then anapanasati, or just practicing equanimity can help settle the mind. So I've used all these different techniques, and I found them very helpful to help to create that balance between concentration and energy, so that the mind's more clear and present in the present moment. Yeah. And that's where the sort of quality of mind, where insights can arise. Yeah. So, shall we have a period of sitting now? Are we all okay for a little time more? Yeah. Maybe like this morning, just beginning by just sweeping through the body, sort of grounding ourselves more in the present moment. Yeah, noticing how the experience of the body is now compared to how it was this morning. So, of course, we've had a meal now. That might have its effects. Yeah, but just bringing our awareness inward into the experience of body in the present moment. how is the experience of the breath compared to this morning? So how we experience the breath also depends on the quality of mind. If the mind's a bit dull or sleepy, then the breath's not so clear. Or if the mind's distracted, the breath's not so clear. So just knowing from the experience of breath, a sense of, yeah, how's the mind in this present moment? Does it have a lot of energy and a lot of thought, or more sleepy and drowsy? Yeah? And knowing sort of the antidote. Yeah? Bringing up energy as some sort of contemplation if we're sleepy. Or say using the breath, or equanimity if the mind is more restless and jumping around. Cultivating this knowing of the mind. Again, being willing to experience the way the mind is, whether it's pleasant or unpleasant. Being willing to learn from the experience of the present moment. And if thoughts come up about our life, the world, family, just say to yourself, oh, no, I can consider that later, just for now. Stay in the present moment. Stay with the breath. Stay with the meditation. So the attitude in meditation is not to get something or to get rid of something, but just to observe the things that are arising and ceasing. Cultivating this Buddha knowing, this awareness. Just like the breath comes and goes, so the thoughts come and go, the moods come and go, feelings come and go. So usually on these day retreats I've taught in the past, we usually alternate practice between walking, sitting and walking meditation, but I don't think quite walking meditation in this situation is probably not so feasible. But I do recommend when you do, retreats that have more sort of spacious venues to cultivate mindfulness while walking. Something that's very much encouraged in our tradition to be more mindful when we're, walking, standing. And I think in Singapore, probably, I hear it's so expensive to have cars in Singapore. Now, probably not many of you have cars. So and that means walking to bus stops and standing at bus stops, sitting on buses, and so opportunities for mindfulness practice. I found the cultivation of walking meditation really very helpful in terms of when I travel and go through airports. It helps me compose the mind as I'm walking through busy places, and keeps you more present, feeling your feet touching the earth, feeling the leg movements. But I don't look at my feet, by the way. Some people practice walking meditation looking at the feet. But if you're walking to an airport, you don't walk around looking at your feet. But you can be aware of your feet touching the earth, which keeps you, aware in the body. But you're looking ahead. And especially now in this day and age, you have to really look ahead because there's people on their mobile devices, and if you don't have to dodge them, you have to dodge people now because people aren't really looking. And some friends took me on the MRT the other day, and hardly a person not looking at their mobile phone on the MRT. Everybody's on the phone, So not really looking inward. It's all out there, isn't it? All out there. I used to, when I was in my working career in London, when I started to do more practice meditation. So London's a busy place, and sometimes I had to wait long periods of time for the buses. And sometimes in London, because of traffic, sometimes you'd be waiting for about 40 minutes, then 3 buses would come because it all got queued up, so the same bus would turn up. But I sort of use it just to, and standing meditation, with standing meditation you can use the breath, but with the eyes open. I don't stand at the bus stop with my eyes closed. I keep my eyes open, but just gazing ahead, just composing the mind best I can on the breath. Something I've experienced is that if I'm actually composed in the present moment, if unexpected things happen, I tend to respond to these things better. So this is actually before I was a monk. So one of these evenings where, winter evening, dark evening, been waiting 20 minutes for a bus, hadn't come yet. Before they used to tell you exactly what time the buses came and things like this, So just using the time just to stand and breathe, And so I was standing there, and this gentleman comes up to me, and he says, "I've been watching you for a while now. You look very suspicious. Come with me to the police station." Comes up and says that, and at first there's a little sort of reaction, then suddenly an intuition comes that maybe this man's not so balanced, And when I look at him, he laughs at me and walks away, And then this other gentleman at the bus stop comes up to me and says, "Oh, don't worry about him. He does that to everybody, So it's sort of, you can respond better to these unexpected situations, and because I don't. Well, one can, expect sometimes, in our more sort of technologically and efficient society, everything to be on time. We don't have to wait. Yeah, you sort of feel when you wait at airports that people don't like to wait. That they want to get where they want to go quick. So having a bit more patience and using these opportunities for meditation can make most of the situation that most people find frustrating. So another incident from my own experience. So often I go up north to visit family from Chithurst up to the north of England. So I have to get a train from Manchester down to London, and I have to go over across London and get on another train at Waterloo to go to Petersfield to get to the monastery. So I get to Waterloo station about 5 o'clock in the evening, rush hour, and there's trouble with the signals on the station. And it says delays for up to an hour because of the signal problems. So, it's a bit disappointing, but what can you do? So I just stand on the station and breathe. It's all I can do, just wait. Yeah. So I'm stood on the station, wait. This is when I was a monk, by the way. Yeah. And this gentleman comes up to me. He has a suitcase, suit, the businessman, London businessman. He comes up to me. He's really angry. He said, "You might be peaceful with this, but I want to strangle somebody." Yeah, because things weren't going his way. He had to wait for the train. You see, people expect so much and they don't reflect. Everything should go according to their wishes. Everything should be on time all the time. Yeah, it's not realistic. So he suffered and I didn't. Yeah. Yeah, so these, if we do have to wait, stand, or walk between places, that's what in the Satipatthana Sutta again, the Buddha recommends being more aware when we're walking between places, when we're standing. Now with standing, at bus stops you can do mindfulness of breathing, but when I'm walking, I tend to more observe more be more mindful of feet touching the earth and physical movement. I find more easier to be mindful in this way when I'm walking. I don't tend to try and watch my breath while I'm walking. Yeah. But just to be alert and present. Yeah, and prepared for whatever might manifest. I mean, sometimes sometimes interesting things manifest too. So, well, one of the things is when you're at airports again, it's a really interesting experience that, you go through the sort of immigration and they check your bags, then you go through what I call the sensual realm. At Gatwick, it winds you around all these shops, I call it the sensual realm. And, and every sort of glittering lights and posters and things. And it's not such a temptation for me because I don't have any money. So, but I'm walking through, and one of the ladies who was sort of looking after one of the stalls comes up to me, gives me a hug, and she says, "Oh, take me with you." So I said, "I'm sorry, I can't do that." But anyway, we got into a conversation, and I recommended her, she wanted to sort of chill out, to go for walks in nature and things, go to a park and walk in nature. And poor lady's a bit stressed out with work and things, Yeah, so being prepared for whatever might come. Yeah. But sometimes not so pleasant things. Sometimes people, in the West, you do get some people who don't like anything that looks different. So walking around looking like this, sometimes I get some rude comments as well. So I have to be mindful of that, being called whatever. I'm afraid I don't want to repeat some of the names I've been called. But yeah, sometimes people can be quite rude. But then, that's some people don't know how to relate to things that are different, especially, say, a bloke going around in a skirt, Some people find that quite intimidating, And of course, in Asia, it's not. But in the West, I notice sometimes when I meet like tradesmen who come to the monastery, they sort of look down, you know, you've got a skirt on, you know. So some people can find that a bit difficult. And at one time, my father, I don't usually go out at night, not a good time to go out, but especially the north of England. But my father was hospitalised, so I went back up and I had to go to the hospital at night. I had a bus, somebody gave me a bus pass. So I'm coming back from the hospital about 9 o'clock at night. I'm on the bus. This guy's looking at me. He says to me, don't you feel like an idiot walking around looking like that? Yeah? And don't you think, don't you think it's dangerous if you go around looking like that because somebody might not like it, and punch you or something like that, And I said, well, I'm just a monk. I'm practicing peace, But then he turns around to this young lady who was on the bus too. He asked her, don't you think he's an idiot going around looking like that? And this young lady said, I think you're an idiot. That was really good. Yeah. So she sort of stuck up for me, So you have to be prepared for all sort of things, and just respond the best you can. Yeah. But it's but I really do find this mindfulness practice really helps you to deal more skillfully with things. If you're present and composed, amazing the way we can respond. So I thought, if you're happy sitting, I thought I'd just do a little bit of standing meditation for 10 minutes. But if you want to carry on sitting, that's fine. But I'm gonna stand and face the Buddha, keep with the eyes open. So those who wish, you can stand and join me just for 10 minutes of standing meditation, and just focus on mindfulness of breathing while we're standing. Stretch the legs a bit. Yeah. Okay. So I haven't actually practiced a lot of standing meditation myself because I tend to like to walk. But what I've heard recommended is to have your feet like a shoulder width apart, knees slightly bent, upright posture. Feel like you've got a string at the top of the head, and you're dangling. Your body's just dangling from that string. So very relaxed. Keep your body very relaxed. Shoulders relaxed. Hands relaxed by the side. Yeah. Knees slightly bent. Yeah, and just be aware of the posture, the eyes open, just gazing ahead. And experiencing the sensations of the breath, or whatever sensations we're feeling, but just as best we can, just staying present in the physical experience of the present moment. So I'm going to go back to the sitting posture now. Please, whatever's comfortable for you, if you want to carry on standing or come back to the sitting posture, and we'll just have another half an hour of quiet meditation. So we have maybe half an hour to stretch our legs and freshen up if we need freshening up, have a drink, and then we come back here for Q&A. Okay, and if people have questions but feel a bit shy to maybe voice them in public, you could write it down and leave it here. It's really up to you. Okay, so I'll meet you back here in half an hour. Okay.
Bow. Brothers and sisters, let's pay respect to Longpa by bowing 3 times. Bow.
I think we picked a good day for this retreat, didn't we? I don't think walking on the seafront or walking in the park would have been great today. So, good day just to sit and meditate. I just look at these for a few minutes just to see some might go together and things. If you don't mind, just a few minutes. Okay, I'll start with the long one first. Yeah. So, can the practice of Mahayana and Theravada be combined during the course of one's practice? Due to the foundational practice, one is already steeped in stepped in a particular practice. I don't see any reason why one can't combine Mahayana and Theravada practices. Yeah. And I mean, one has to look about there's different means of bringing out the same result, right? And so it's not so much the means that's the important thing, it's actually what it does. So, practicing being mindful chanting, is a way of cultivating mindfulness if we do much more devotional practices. And the purpose of it is just a way to sort of develop the mind through these different practices, more focus, more mindfulness, and wholesome qualities. I mean, chanting reflected on skillful themes has its good effects. Yeah? Bringing skillful teachings to mind. So to me, I don't see any conflict there. And I've been in one Theravada monastery I've been in has a very nice shrine to the Bodhisattva compassion in it. Lumpur Nan's monastery, I think you know Lumpur Nan here, yeah. From your from your noble perspective and true understanding, is letting go of all worldly ways and taking up the robes I think it probably means something way to the end of rebirth. Maybe it might mean it's more efficient or something like way to the end of rebirth. Yeah. Well, I suppose that's why I'm a monk, because I thought it would. It seemed to me to take away the distractions of lay life. I could see that the conditions in a monastery and the support of living with monks and nuns could be very the best sort of support for going beyond suffering. But that's me. I'm not saying everybody's like me. Maybe other people find the present situation is more conducive. But that's I can say that's why I became a monk, because it when I practicing in lay life for me, and I didn't have family obligations, I felt I could be more focused on the practice, and that became the most important thing in my life, was the Buddhist practice. So naturally, I went to the monastery. How do you endure the hardships and challenges found over the years as a monk without wanting to return to lay life? I have encountered senior monks and nuns who have expressed sincere desire to return to lay life. One of whom has left home already over 30 years. With over 30 years established in the practice, yeah. Yeah, I mean, in the Theravada tradition, I imagine the same in Mahayana, you don't have to make life vows. So it's actually very easy for me to disrobe. All I have to do is tell somebody sincerely, I'm leaving the training, say it 3 times sincerely, and that's it, Put on your trousers, And I think that's very wise of the Buddha, because, if you can't keep the discipline of a monk or a nun, then I say better to be a good layperson than a bad monk, For some people, they have other interests and want to do other things. So I ordained, 40 years ago. with 4 others, and they all went back to lay life. Yeah. The year before me, they all went back to lay life. The year after me, 1 still survives. So I mean, it's not everybody. It stays in the robe, you know. So some people do. One monk in England just disrobed after over 30 years. Yeah, and yeah, you don't make life vows. If you feel you want to carry on the Buddhist path outside a monastic environment, then that's fine. But in Thailand, it seemed as quite a good thing to spend time staying in monasteries. And if you do, you know, to spend a few years in a monastery, it looks good on your CV in Thailand. Probably not in England, but in Thailand, it looks good on your CV, you know, and it's a respected thing that, you know, people spend a certain time living, you know, under the discipline of a monk or a nun, you know, and yeah, but the same. Most people don't. The percentage that disrobe is greater than the percent that stay on. That's okay. But the people who do go back to lay life, most of them stay connected to the monastery and come and visit, and what they've learned from their time as monks and nuns has benefited them in their lay life. So they just carrying on with other in another form, you could say. Yeah, yeah. In Sri Lanka, there's a lot more pressure to stay in the robe if you become a monk, say. And this is unfortunate because you hear quite a few stories about monks misbehaving in Sri Lanka because they can't keep the discipline, so they get involved in politics and other things, and things that are not appropriate for a monk. But they have too much social pressure to stay in the robe. So it's nice in Thailand that you don't have that social pressure, and also in England, you know. You know, also if people think of disrobing, you know, usually, you know, they'll talk about it and consider it for a while. They won't just sort of run away at the first impulse, you know, usually stick with it for a while. So during our Vasuchitas this year, 2 monks disrobed. It's not actually that it's not so often that you in the Vasa that 2 monks disrobe, but this year this was what happened. You know, they thought about it, talked about it, but they decided, yeah, their heart wasn't in their life as a monk anymore, which is okay. So good, they're good people, and so they'll go back to lay life and do good things with their lay life. Yeah. So, may I ask if you could share what can we do and expect during a journey of purification? Well, look, you know, when we think about the practice and what we have to experience, it really depends on our personal karma, doesn't it, really? And all our karma is different. We all have different challenges, but we can expect challenges, you know. It's not an easy journey if you really, you know, want to do it. You know, working with the mind and meditation, and, you know, experiencing some of these mind states and temptations and keeping precepts. Yeah, it takes some sort of discipline and but you know, difficult to do, but great benefits. You know, I say, and I said, the challenges are different for different people. So yeah, we have to learn and also learn from our mistakes. You know, in the Buddhist tradition, of course, on these moon days, we always redo our precepts. Yeah, so lay people take their 5 precepts, or sometimes 8 precepts on the Uposatha days. The monks and nuns do their precepts because, you know, sometimes we lose it a little bit, so we have to reaffirm our aspirations. If we confess any of those precepts that we've transgressed, and then we begin again and make our intention to try and be more skillful in the future. And so same for all of us, isn't it? You know, maybe we do something, you know, say something that wasn't in line with the precepts, and something happens, and we can acknowledge that and then begin again. we do our aspirations, and if we're sincere, as we go on, then the strength of mind to keep those precepts develops, and then it becomes more part of our nature. We will tend to want to get into unskillful speech and backbiting and things like this. Yeah. But so expect some challenges, but also, I did find, moments of joy too came from the practice, which are more of a different sort of joy than just going out having fun with my mates, occasional sort of, especially around generosity and things, doing something wholesome and feeling the joy of that. So I began to experience another source of happiness besides just going to movies and and parties and things like that. Yeah, yeah. And and in the early days, the occasional pleasant meditation. It's nice to experience that too. Yeah. So speaking of meditation, okay, so could you give some advice on continuing the meditation practice? As I don't see any progress even after a few years. I also come to dread my daily meditation practice. Yes. Well, it is a very gradual process, And the analogy the Buddha gives, it's like when we use an axe, to cut wood. If every time we use the axe to cut wood and we looked how much the handle had worn away, you're not going to see much difference. But it's only over a period of time that we'll see the benefits of it. But I'd like to share a particular story about somebody who had the same idea here. So his name was Maurice Walsh. And he was a German professor in London University. And he got interested in the idea of meditation. So he started to go to the Buddhist Society in London and do the meditation there. He was going for several months, and he came to the conclusion, not getting anywhere with this meditation, I think I'll probably give up, So he had a rough meditation, and he went home, and he sat with his missus at the dinner table. And then suddenly his wife says to him, "You know something, Maurice? You've been so less bad-tempered since you've been doing that meditation." And he suddenly realized, oh, yeah. So he began to see that, actually the meditation was having its effect. Maybe the experience of the actual meditation itself wasn't so great for him, but he was being more patient now, less reactive. So sometimes we look for the benefits in the meditation itself, but we don't sometimes notice the changes in the way we respond to things in life. So that's something also to consider. So after that, after his wife said that to him, he carried on. And he went on to be a prominent member of the English Sangha Trust. He changed his linguistic skills to Pali, and he translated the Digha Nikaya. I don't know if you wanted the translation of the Digha Nikaya is from a gentleman called Maurice Walsh. I think Bhikkhu Bodhi was quite happy with it, so he didn't retranslate it. Yeah, so that was Maurice Walsh. And at the age of 80, he was a temporary monk for 3 months at Amaravati, and he passed away several years ago now. But yeah, he was a wonderful old fellow, very humorous, and he did a lot for the Sangha and benefited a lot from his Buddhist practice. I don't think he ever confessed to have fantastic meditation, but he kept going, kept with it, and it did benefit him. Yeah, so I mean, it's a question of just going on faith a bit, It's subtle the way it affects us. And like if you're dreading it, maybe maybe lessen the period of time. I do say in terms of it's good to try and maintain a daily practice, but I would say, like don't set a period of time that's too difficult, and don't set a time also that's too easy. So just know what we can manage, and something maybe that maybe we don't dread. If we say I've got to sit there for an hour, then yeah, maybe dread. If you can say something we change, maybe I'll sit there for 20 minutes. And maybe you don't dread that so much, so lessen the time when you practice. And if you do feel that sense of dread, of course, I've experienced it, or, not another session, when we've had sort of like retreats, especially in the early days, got to go through that again, But when I did, I would just acknowledge that sense of dread at the beginning of meditation and just breathe with it, just to know it. This is dread. And it's interesting how sometimes that feeling of dread can go. And then the mind becomes much more peaceful. So just to acknowledge that sense of dread, if we do have it, before a period of meditation, especially say the last one was pretty hard going, or the last few were a bit hard going, then just acknowledge, okay, based on that last experience, there's a bit of sense of dread, but I'll just be with it, stay with it. The opposite extreme is I had a really good meditation last time, to go into meditation wanting the same thing again. So that's just as drastic, disappointment when you don't get it. So whatever your experience at the beginning of meditation, just be aware of that and just carry on with the practice. Yeah. My parents are afraid that I'll be possessed by an evil force if I continue to practice meditation. And why? Because an uncle went crazy after practicing meditation. May I get your perspective or guidance, please? This is why it's important if we, in meditation, to have people we can talk about our meditation experience with. Because, some people can have some very strange experiences in meditation, and we have to be careful with any sort of strange experiences and have somebody who can guide us, through it, especially with like mental phenomena and visions and things like this. One safety net I always say to people is don't lose the sense of the body. That's where problems start, when people get carried away with mental phenomena and lose a sense of body, especially in the early days. That's when you can go a bit crazy, get too carried away with visionary stuff or perception. Always, like by breath meditation, body meditations, very important to establish that first. Because I knew a very nice man back in England. He used to come to our monastery, a very nice, good-natured fellow. He had what he called fantastic meditation. What people might think is great, seeing nagas and devas and all these sort of interesting phenomena, but he got unbalanced with it. Unfortunately, he took his life. But he didn't sort of ground himself. He got carried away with all this sort of stuff, and something went a bit wrong. So the importance of keeping grounded in the body, and that'll always be a safety net. And then having people you can, who have some experience, if you're having any strange experience, that you can talk to it about, how to deal with it, how to relate to it. There was a story in the time of Ajahn Mun, there was a young lady who had some quite interesting experience, and she came to Ajahn Mun about it. Ajahn Mun's advice was, stop meditating until you can find a good teacher. So she didn't meditate for many years, and then eventually Ajahn Mahabodh came along, and she started to meditate again, and she became quite an enlightened nun. And there's a book about her. Her name was Mechi Gao. Yeah. But she has the mind, quite a lively mind, and things would happen. She really needed a good teacher to guide her through it. And Luang Pu Man sensed that. That's why he said, stop meditating for now till you have connection with the teacher. Because Luang Pu Man used to always be itinerant. He wouldn't stay in one place, so he couldn't guide her himself. Yeah. But but when the teacher came along and she had that stable presence of a teacher, he could guide her through it, and she was quite an enlightened nun by all accounts. Yeah. So, what to say to your parents? Tell it, it's very rare somebody goes crazy meditating if they have a good teacher. And what can be wrong with freeing the heart from greed, hate, and delusion? What can be wrong about that? And if you have a good guide and good supports, then you won't get caught up in the delusion of the mind, but you'll see it for what it is, and it'll be a benefit for oneself and others. So I hope you can, reassure your parents. I think one of the things that can send a message to your parents is to see good results in you. I mean, I think that's something that my parents noticed. I used to be quite a bit wild when I was young. I mellowed out a lot. I think that sort of... my father got a bit interested in meditation at once. Yeah. And my mother did. She went on retreats with Ajahn Karuniko once. And she used to go to Amawati and meditate. Because she saw the good effects it had on me from this restless, agitated youth who couldn't sit still for 2 minutes. And so, if they see good results in you, that'll be reassuring to them. They see you're more, with my father, my father was an atheist, religion is the opium of the masses, he's a Marxist, And we used to get into arguments about Buddhism. He'd give his view, I give my view, and it wasn't going anywhere. So I stopped talking about Buddhism with him. But instead, I'd go home and start helping with things around the house, doing things to help them, And he saw me more calm, sat quietly reading, helping around the house. And I think that said a lot, more than my words sometimes, the example. Yeah. And once actually, I had a book by Bhikkhu Bodhi with me on one visit, and it's about refuges and precepts, a booklet. And I was reading, I didn't intend, I wasn't forced on my father, but I left it on the chair when I went out to visit somebody. And my father picked it up and read it. And he said, oh, it's quite good what he read. He liked what he read. So that's, so it does, the way we are does affect the family. Yeah. So, yes, these are things more like dealing with negative states. There is a part of me that strongly resists and rejects any negative parts of myself. How can I make peace and suffer less? Yeah. Well, I mean, that's a good start to actually be aware that we're resisting and rejecting certain negative states. That's a good start. And the practice now is maybe learn to be more accepting of them as just, we all experience negative states, And we have to look at our conditioning a bit, our like social conditioning. For example, maybe in some religious families, you could say, there is a sense you shouldn't be angry. You're brought up with this voice that says you shouldn't be angry, you shouldn't be this. Yeah. Now I wasn't brought up in a religious, my father wasn't religious, so I could get angry, and it was nobody said I shouldn't be angry. So I didn't have any problem in terms of repressing anger and things like this, because I was all right. I used to get angry with my sister. We used to shout at each other, and nobody told me I shouldn't be angry. Yeah. But if I'd been told a lot, you shouldn't be angry, it's bad, it's evil, then maybe I'd had a different relationship to the anger, right? But because I didn't have that, when I came to Buddhist practice, I realized, well, when I got angry, it didn't leave me feeling very good, and it didn't have a good effect on the people that I got angry with. So I started to be more mindful of it and not experience it without acting on it. So I became more sort of, I was more accepting of negative states, even though I wasn't conditioned not to accept them. So we have to look at that. Are we conditioned in some way that we shouldn't be negative, or we should be loving kindness all the time, 24/7? No, it's not possible, is it really? But, we have negative states. But what I would say, the more we learn to accept it and not get caught into the negative thoughts that come from that negative state, we can replace those thoughts with something else, a mantra maybe like Bhutto, yeah? Or reflect or use our thoughts a different way, then these negative states will lose their power, because we're not feeding them through getting caught into the negative thought patterns. But it's important to learn to accept negative states as just part of what we experience as human beings. Yeah. And just be aware of how we're conditioned in terms of, the message we've had about what's allowable to experience and what's not allowable to experience. In Buddhism, all's allowable to experience, but if it's unskillful, try not to act or speak on it. And that's the guidelines of the Buddha, yeah. And that's how we can go beyond them. Actually, I was one evening we was having a midnight meditation, and this was when I was an Anagarika up in our monastery in Northumberland. And it's wintertime. We only had quite a small shrine room, right? And it was really cold outside. And usually in this retreat, when we were having these retreats, I'd walk at the back of the shrine rooms in the warmth, just stretch my legs a bit. And then another monk came to stay, another senior monk came to stay. And I went to do my walk in the back. He said, "Oi, don't walk there, go outside." Right? I got, angry. Come in here, but it was interesting because one of the reasons I was walking, because I was trying to keep awake, right? Anyway, I didn't go outside. I just went back to my cushion and sat again. I was feeling negative, But I noticed, actually, I'm quite awake now. I don't have to fight off the tiredness anymore. And so I just saw that negative mindset as something a bit different in different light, which actually helped me to stay awake. So it's the way you relate to these states, isn't it? Yeah. So how can I judge myself and others less? I notice automatic negative thoughts arise towards other people. Yeah, I mean, these are habits that we've accumulated, but we can change them, by changing the thoughts, really. Yeah, noticing it's good. We're noticing it and we're aware of it, but it does take time with these habits, because before we came to Buddhist practice, we maybe indulged them for quite a while, and yeah, it takes time to develop the mindfulness to be aware of them in a way that these thoughts and mind states lose their power. Because we've empowered them for so long, now we have to say disempower them. And this is where the meditation and mindfulness practice can help. It can help to strengthen our mindfulness and our wisdom, and that will disempower the negative thoughts. But again, don't be negative about your negativity. Just see it for what it is. It's just a negative thought, and try to avoid getting too much into the judgmental I shouldn't be thinking like this. And just know that was a negative thought that arose and passed away. You see it like that, you know, and think to yourself, I'm just having a negative thought like other people have negative thoughts. Yeah, so somehow just get a more wise perspective on it in a way that we don't get too much into judgmental mind. And it seems automatic, but as mindfulness strengthens, it'll be less automatic. We'll catch it much more quicker. And then and then help us to let go of those habits. So yeah, keep going. Yeah. I'd like to ask about the willingness and acceptance to experience the mental formations during meditation. I have the tendency to be swept away by depressing thoughts and rumination. Hence, I have some aversion to long meditation sits out of fear that I have to endure this and doubting my ability to handle it. Do you have any advice? So this is, again, similar things, isn't it? The dreading, if we had, unpleasant experiences in meditation, yes, and so we dread the next session. So, yeah. I was just speaking to somebody the other day who's having, a lot of anxiety problems. And in England, there's a lot of people with anxiety problems, and they go to these mindfulness classes. It's become quite a big thing in England now, mindfulness. And one woman's comment that I read in this, in some books about the mindfulness organization, one woman said, so she started going to the mindfulness class because she was experiencing strong anxiety. But she really benefited from the classes. And her comment was interesting. She said, I still experience anxiety, she said, but now I'm bigger than the anxiety. And I think that's what, this is where the power of mindfulness comes in. We get a more perspective on it. We're bigger than it, in effect. That's the experience of it. At first, it seems to overwhelm us, but as we strengthen the mindfulness, then it's like we empower the mindfulness more, and then it's like we become bigger than the depressed state. But that just takes time to cultivate. Now, meditation is also not just about sitting, or go for a mindful walk. Go for a walk in nature, something. If we tend to be, depressive thoughts or negative thoughts, then go into a nice environment and do some walking meditation. You don't have to just sit all the time. Do some chanting maybe, or something that has a more like positive effect on the mind if we tend to get dragged into more depressive states initially. So some sort of mindful activity. So this can be more helpful. And don't do such long meditation sits. Just find what works for you. Don't feel you have to sit for an hour with it. I'll say, just get something not sustainable. Yeah, just go do a little sit and then go for a mindful walk, park or something. Yeah. I understand that I'm not supposed to follow the breath from nose to lung to abdomen. I'm supposed to fix my breath at one point at the nasal. Is this correct? It's seeing what works for you, but I was saying earlier on that what I find was more helpful in terms of insight was to actually do that, follow the breath in from the nose to the chest, abdomen. I find this, the understanding that came from that, just how different mind states affect the body. it helped me to be much more aware of the mind and helped me to be more grounded in the present moment. And somehow that more open sense of awareness, rather than trying to get too focused on one point, but that openness of awareness was something that really helped me to continue the mindfulness to activity. Because, some people have the ability to focus on a point, but then when they have to do things, they still get overwhelmed by reactions and mind states. But if you develop this openness of awareness, then it really gives you more the ability to cope with different situations better. Yeah. And maybe, maybe we have to experience more with an openness of awareness, but we get strength from that experience and we understand from that experience. So when I started to meditate, at first I couldn't do the nose, but I could do more the abdomen. But now I've let it happen more naturally now, just wherever the breath wants to be experienced in the body. And then I became more peaceful from that, rather than trying to force it into where I thought it should be. And then that's really good effect on the body too, health-wise. Mindful, full body mindful breathing, I think, has a beneficial effect on the physical and the energies in the body. Yeah. So, there's no thing that everybody should do the same, but we have to see what works for us. It's all good, but see what works for us and helps us to, develop the mindfulness that's also the mindfulness that can spill over into our everyday activities. And that helps us to be more aware and awake through all our daily activities. So as I was saying in the Anapanasati Sutra I read today, there was nothing about having to watch the breath at the tip of the nose. It was just about being mindful breathing. Yeah. But I think in the Visuddhimagga commentary there's something about watching the tip of the nose, but it's a commentary. But actually the Buddha's word is just mindfully breathe in, mindfully breathe out. So may I ask, why do I experience some body and head movement during and shaking while meditating? When movements and shaking occurs, it can be a bit distracting to focus while meditating. What is my advice? For instance, to remain focused on the breathing. Well, one thing to be aware of is how much effort you're putting into trying to focus on the breath. You see, too much effort can have effect can make you shake a bit. It could be just energies moving through the body too. So maybe I would suggest, moderate your effort and maybe trying to broaden your base of awareness. Maybe something like more whole body awareness in the meditation might be more conducive. And if the shaking gets too bad, if you're at home, then do some walking meditation, or standing or walking. Yeah. But I would look at just how much effort and willpower you use in the meditation practice, and try and broaden your area of mindfulness of the body. This will help with the balancing of the energies. May I ask if there's a significant moment that drove your confidence closer to the Buddha's teachings? Mm-hmm. Well, strangely enough, I had in my lay life, before I came across the Buddha's teachings, I had a sort of an insight. And it came sort of after a sort of a special experience. that I had. And the special experience came when I was doing martial arts. That just changed something in the way I saw things. And the insight I had, I could see that a lot of my suffering was caused from my own selfishness and the way I was living, yeah, and my selfishness. And I had that insight. So then and then something got me interested in spiritual things, because through these experiences, a lot more sensitivity I found. So I started to inquire about religions, right? And I had Christian friends at work, and they said, "You got to believe in God. You got to believe in Christ as a savior." But I was brought up an atheist. I was brought up a scientist, and I couldn't just blindly believe something. I couldn't take on a belief system, right? And I went to the Hare Krishna temple in London, and it's a similar thing. You had to sort of take on Krishna. And then one day, a friend of mine at work said, "Oh, in Buddhism, you don't have to believe in God." I thought, "Oh, interesting." But then I couldn't find a book on Buddhism. Yeah, it's not like now, and this is in the sort of mid-70s in England, 1976, 77. Now, it's very interesting the way things work out. So, my father brought me up as an atheist, but he's always keen on me learning things, and educating myself. So I'm in Manchester with him I used to go and visit him for Christmas. And I'm to mention something about Buddhism. And my father said, "Oh, I read a book on Buddhism once. It was a Penguin book by a man called Christmas Humphreys." And so we went in this shop in Manchester, and it was there. So my father helped me to buy my first Buddhist book. Yeah. So I took that home, and the first thing I read, it was really interesting. The first story in that book is about, do you know the story about the blind man and the elephant? Yeah, and that was just like what I'd experienced, because I appreciated what the different people said, but it didn't seem to cover the whole picture, And everyone says they're right and other people are wrong, just like the people holding different parts of the elephant. So that was really interesting to read that first, but then go into the Four Noble Truths, cause of suffering is selfishness, It just explained all these things to me. So I think from that day I was a Buddhist, that's the way it was, So then I went down to the Buddhist Society in London, got more books, studied more, eventually met Ajahn Sumedho, yeah. So I must have, even though from my wild youth, I might have done some karma somewhere along, some good karma somewhere, yeah, that I found Buddhism. Yeah. Yeah. So that was a significant moment, actually, that book. And it just was a great revelation reading that. Even though it wasn't the best Buddhist book, but it was enough, And I've still got the book in my kuti in Chithurst. Because when my father passed away, I cleared the house out, I found the book, so I kept it. Yeah. And that's the way faith arises, It can be from reading something or meeting somebody who inspires you on some level. There are different ways that faith can arise, but something that really touches you, touches the heart, and you feel motivated to look more deeply into it. So, are observance of rites and rituals beneficial to the practice? Can one do too much? I'd like to know what is meant by clinging to rites and rituals. Yeah. And just that follows on to the next question. Could you share about stream entry experiences that you know about? What were they doing just before that? Example, contemplating non-self or of intention. So, attachment to rites and rituals, clinging to them as being the be-all and end-all of a Buddhist practice, and clinging to that, the only way to practice these rites and rituals is limited. So clinging to rites and rituals won't lead to enlightenment, but it doesn't mean we can't use them, but we have to use them wisely and maybe see how they came about. Because you can find some rites and rituals occurred during certain circumstances, but when those circumstances have changed, but they're still keeping the rites and ritual. So you really to understand a little bit of how they came about, if they're still useful, yeah. So we can use them, but we see, they can be used in a way to, as mindfulness practices, certain rituals and ways of bringing people together. There can be a benefit of these sort of these occasions, yeah. But if we see that as the only way to practice, the only valid practice, then that's limited. So we use them, ideally to use them without clinging to them. If we cling to them, they can limit our insight, our understanding. And this is not so much rites and rituals, but there's a sense that in different societies, the different things that are seen as okay, but in other societies, it's not okay. And if you, let's say, in Thailand, it's seen as impolite to touch somebody on the head, but in England, it's okay. So this is like there's certain social conventions that differ from society to society. And really, ultimately, there's nothing wrong with touching somebody on the head, but in some societies, they see it that way. And Ajahn Chah himself, when he came to England, he saw people, he said, he went to America and he'd be teaching to the Americans, and after people get up and people touch each other on the head, he said, oh, people touch each other on the head. He could see that, his own conditioning around it. So it didn't bother him, but he thought, oh, interesting that he had touch each other on the head. Yeah. But if we see that as what should always happen, then that's limiting, you see. We're always going to react to that, seeing that happen. Yeah. If we don't see it's our more conditioning. So the practice of awareness is to really notice our social conditioning, yeah, and how that affects the way we respond to things. Yeah. And Ajahn Chah sort of joke, makes some humorous comments about it, like it's like if somebody from a lower class touched a general on the head, it could be the end of his life, an army general. But the army generals come to him and say, "Please, Lumpur, touch me on the head." So it's sort of different in terms of the people, Yeah. And he also jokes that if people made chicken poo the currency, then people will be fighting over chicken poo, So it's sort of just helping us to look into the nature of conventions. So it's good to understand a little bit about, with the rituals that we experience, maybe a sense of how did they come about? Are they still valid? Just to look into that. If we see the reason behind them, sometimes that's more helpful in terms of supporting our mindfulness when we do it ourselves, when we understand the reasoning behind it. Yeah. And, like chanting, for instance, a lot of, some Westerners don't like chanting. But I find it's very helpful, to focus on Pali chanting for 20 minutes. I find it very calming effect on the mind. But some people, some monks as well don't like it. In our monastery, we have evening puja, and there are some people who come to join us from outside for those pujas who seem to appear when the chant is finished and disappear before we do the finishing chanting. Yeah, so they may be missing out because you can use reflective chants in a way to, compose the mind, And I used to notice that when I first went to the Hampstead Vihara, that after chanting, my mind was more calm before meditation than if I hadn't chanted. If I got there late and missed the chanting, when I came to the sitting, the mind was still more busy. But if I got there in time to the 20 minutes of evening chanting, then the mind would settle a bit more. So I saw the benefit of chanting. So I'm glad I didn't have any resistance to it myself. I quite, I found it okay, and it was beneficial. And I was telling a story the other day. So the first time I took my mother to the monastery. So it was a Katina ceremony at Chithurst. And I know that was before I was a monk, when I was still a lay person. But she knew I was inclining towards monastic life, so I wanted to introduce her to the monastery. So I take her to it used to be, before we had the Dhamma hall, it was in an outside marquee. And so we were in the marquee, and I was a bit agitated. Oh, she's going to respond to all this, will she be all right, And then the monks started to chant the Paritta. And all of a sudden I just went all calm, listening to Paritta. I just felt this ease and calm come to the mind. So also, chanting can have a very calming effect. Yeah. And anyway, it went well. Mother was okay with it all. So I was pleased about that. Like I say, she started to come and visit the monastery and join for meditation. And she had some good experiences at the monastery, actually. Yeah, and made some good friends. So, could you share about stream entry experiences that you know about? What were they doing just before that? Example, contemplating non-self of intention. Well, if you ask the monks this, they're not supposed to divulge any attainments to the lay people. Yeah. But when you think about what stream entry is, it's when there's no more doubt about the practice anymore, no more skeptical doubt. No more attachment, seeing that rites and rituals are the only way to practice. You still use them, but you don't cling to them anymore. So if you can do them, fine. If you can't do them, that's fine too. And just the insight into self-view, Sakaya Ditti, it's called in the Pali, that you're seen through the illusion of a permanent self. So these are the insights of somebody who's entered the stream of Dhamma. Yeah, these sort of insights. So, have you had those insights? If you have, then maybe you're stream enters. And I think, to me, it's more a gradual thing. It's not a sudden thing. It's this insight gradually occurs. As you more watch the mind, then this insight about permanent self, the idea of a permanent self, you see through it. And seeing through it means that you don't create yourself as this sort of person, that sort of person anymore. Yeah. And then a sense of letting go happens. And maybe you begin to experience a mind where there's no self anymore, the empty mind, the original mind. So this is like, seeing, this is the guideline towards entering the stream of Dhamma. You're not clinging to the idea of a self anymore. So you don't go out and say, I'm an angry person, I'm a lustful person, but you just see them as mind states, conditioned that arise and pass away. So you don't create self-view. And that's a relief, because if we create ourselves as something, that's not peaceful. And if we create ourselves a negative way, that's going to be dukkha, isn't it? Some sort of suffering, yeah. If we identify with some of these mind states as what we are. But if we see through them as just conditioned, not self, then that's freedom from them. knowing them for what they are. So we see through self-view in that way. And that's a relief. So those are the things that they say. Stream entry is no more doubts about the practice, attachment to rites and rituals, and the insight into self-view. So that's the questions on the papers. I don't know if anybody has any more questions from that. Yes? Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Rampo, for beginning the day with an overview of the Anapanasati Sutta. I think that's just the thing that I needed to hear. So one question about this Anapanasati Sutta is, those 16 things about the training of the breath, are they like very strict graduated steps that we need to progress from one to the next? That's one point of view. Or are they like mere kind of like guidelines or pointers to a practice in general? So I mean, for myself, I've been like trying to find out the answer, reading around, thinking about it, and doing the practice myself. And I come to see that there are possibly like 3 different perspectives that are not necessarily contradictory, maybe overlapping. So one way of looking at it, the first perspective is that at the beginning, when our mind is like very turbulent and coarse, we need to start somewhere. And so that's when we need to train in a graduated way. And one of the purpose of this training is to condition our mind to using the breath as like a cue setter for mindfulness. So that's why we need to put in the effort to train in a graduated way. So that's the first perspective that I derive. And now sorry, be patient with me. And the second perspective is that sometimes in the course of training, who knows, you might get some experiences like you immediately upon sitting down or starting the meditation, you find that certain experiences, like they kind of like predominate in your mind. It could be like blissful experiences, what we call piti and sukha, or it may be some clarity experiences, like your mind is very clear, you can see everything very clearly, but without disturbing the base. So if that happens, what I feel is that we should just don't go against the natural flow of things, but just whatever is there predominating in your mind, you take that, you observe that, while using the breath as a cue setter to maintain the mindfulness and observe and try to derive some understanding from it. Or who knows, maybe there may be times where the time is right and you hear some teachings from certain teachers or you read certain books and it triggers some flashes of insight, and you can't deny it because it is very in your head, it's like you get experiences like suddenly all your tensions, all your questions, they kind of like come to a stop. They kind of like dissolve and you feel a very utter bliss and clarity, and you feel that you understood the teachings at a more deeper level. So I feel that when that happens, then there's no, it carries with it a certain momentum. And what you need to do is you kind of like you settle into it, you observe it, you see where it's leading you, but using the breath again to anchor you in the present moment while observing it. So that's more like in this second perspective is that your training can start from either the second, the third, or even the fourth tetrad. Yeah, but when you lose the momentum, then you go back to the breath again, right from step 1, and you try to start the training again. So that's the second perspective. And there's a third perspective where after a long period of training and possibly you may come to a stage where it doesn't matter whether or not you have experiences of bliss, clarity, or those flashes of insight. You just stay with the breath, You are not even hankering for those kind of experiences, whether first dhyana, second dhyana, third dhyana, and so forth. You are just very contented to stay with the breath. Either that or with the unmediated awareness, that present moment awareness as it is. So it seems to me there are these 3 perspectives. Is this the right way to proceed, or am I kind of like losing it?
Well, I just find that just when we start to practice mindfulness of breathing, things just become more apparent from that. The more the calm there is in the mind, then the more we see. And like with those 4 foundations of mindfulness, and the way we understand the mind becomes more refined. And yeah, and if strong states come up like piti, but then not to get carried away with that, but stay with the breath to it, so we can keep observing and watching, and seeing the impermanence of these mind states too. And establishing that knowingness to know the mind, I find important. Yeah, so that we know the mind that's affected by desire, aversion, and delusion, and then to know the mind that's not experiencing those things. So I just find you do it, you just gradually become more aware of the mind and what's in the mind, and then more understanding. Like in the 4th foundation, is more about understanding how things arise and what the conditions in which they arise, and how to let go. Really seeing very clearly how to let go of certain mind states. And that's just what you learn. I find you just learn through practice, keep on doing it, and you learn these things gradually. And that understanding of the mind becomes just more refined as we practice. So I feel it's more like a natural process, but I see a sort of progression in terms of, first you just try and get in the body a bit, and then you get in touch more with your feelings a bit. And then you begin to understand what's behind those feelings, and the mind states, and whether it's coming from the mind or the body. And then you begin to see the mind more clearly, what's in the mind, which hindrances there, things like this. And then you begin to understand how they come about and how to let them go. So it's a gradual sort of refining of awareness, and you're learning, all the time. It seems to me more of a natural process that just naturally develops. Yeah. So.
Summarize. Generally, we try to we progress gradually, but when all these experiences they come, and we kind of like, we don't get carried away, but we observe it, still anchoring, being anchored in the mindfulness of the breath.
Yes.
And we see where it leads to. And when that all those experiences or even the flashes of insight, they kind of like lose momentum, we don't get depressed or anything. We go back to the training again and see what comes next. Yes.
Yes.
Then will there come a point where you have gained like you kind of like, you are just very contented to stay with the breath, or with that present moment awareness? You are not even hankering for any kind of experiences. I think this Ajahn Lee Dhammadharo, he has something to say about this. He says that if right from the beginning, even if the Buddha were to appear and say, oh, this present moment awareness, luminous, unelaborated, nothing that you can take away from, nothing that you can add to, it is just the Buddha in the palm of your hand. That is it. But we are not going to believe it. We are not in the capacity to kind of like understand and really settle into that kind of insight. So what the Buddha did is that he gave us a very skillful tool, a skillful toy, and that's called meditation. And that bring us through all this so that we can watch all those subtle experiences arising. I mean, first of all, we get rid of our attachment to the 8 worldly dhammas, and then he brought us through what looks like the 4 dhyanas, and even from there we observe, we see that even these 4 dhyanas, they are like appearances of the mind, they are of the 3 characteristics, and finally we come to the stage of completely letting go. And what is left after letting go is that unmediated awareness, that so-called Buddha nature that is pure and luminous, that's not crowded over by all these hopes and fears and the stains and adventitious defilements. Yeah. So it's bringing you one big round, but it's just coming back to that present moment awareness. But of course, I mean, as a beginner, we cannot fake it, We have to go through the training and experience it and gain the insight. And when all these adventitious defilements are dissolved, and then we can really stay with that present moment awareness, contented. without outflowing. Is that the correct understanding?
Yes, that sounds more correct. Yeah. When we don't cling to the condition, the things that arise and ceasing, the natural abiding of the mind is in the fundamental awareness, the Buddha nature. But the thing is, the breath helps disengage from the thoughts, the moods, so the awareness rests in its natural state. Yeah.
So there will come a point when you are just really contented to stay, and you can't break it because you find that boredom is less of a problem.
I mean, the natural state is maybe you could say free from boredom. Boredom is still a condition that comes and goes. Yeah. Yes, there.
Question, like with the current environment today, there's a lot of stimuli, social media, because
Yeah.
I mean, like I'm thinking more of the younger generation. I have two daughters as well. I think being still or not, just sitting down, they just cause so much uneasiness. Just have to be tedious or radios. I mean, in podcasts as well, they just can't just be silent. How do we help the young generation like that?
Well, yeah, I did read a book recently, and it related, like in the West now, mental illness among young people is really increasing a lot. And this book said that there's a correlation between the decline of the mental health of the young people with the arrival of the smartphone, which I can understand. The social media stuff and the effects it has on the young people. And like I say on the MRT yesterday, everybody's on their phone. But I think what he recommends in this book, in terms of children, is to talk to them about it. If you can outline to them the disadvantages of it and encourage moderation with it. You can't take it off them because everybody's got them, but how to encourage using them wisely, really. And that's, sitting down to talk with the children, really. You can't just say, you can't have it, but try to explain to them the disadvantages of it. And to sort of encourage them to use them in moderation. Yeah. And maybe try and steer them towards other activities away from screens. There's other things maybe that you can encourage them towards, besides the computers and the screens and the phones. Yeah. I must say I'm glad I'm not a youngster in this day and age myself. With all the things, the distractions now. But it's a challenge. To how to look after the mental health of our young ones. Yeah. I think. I do say if they're interested, doing things, physical things. To do some sort of sports, ballet, dance, or something like that. Music. Those are getting away from the screens. I think these have a much more good effect on the mental health. Some sort of activities. Yeah, for them that have more better effect on them. Yes, no. Favorite sutta? Oh, I've got so many favorite suttas. When I came to the monastery, I had all these, all the Pali translations. I really enjoyed just reading through the suttas. I can't. One that's a favorite. Well, I read one today in terms of meditation about the gold. Yeah, and that's one I often share because I found it quite helpful and a nice analogy I like. Yeah. Another, maybe to share another then, okay. So, And it's a nice story because it's how to judge a person's character, right? And so, so the Buddha's on the edge of the town, and all these ascetics walk past the Buddha, right? And they go back to the palace, and oh yeah, and the King Pasenadi sat with the Buddha, and all these ascetics go by, you know. And then the Pasenadi turns to the Buddha and said, "Oh, those ascetics, are any of them enlightened beings?" You know? And the Buddha said that it'd be difficult for you, indulging in sensual pleasures, to know who's enlightened or not. But then the Buddha said that there's ways you can sort of get a sense if somebody's has some level of enlightenment or not, but not from just seeing them. Really to observing the way they live, the way they behave, the way they teach, how moral they are, how they deal with difficulties and things like that. So he gave a sort of summary of certain things, you know. And also saying that you can't judge a book by looking at its cover, you know. In other words, that don't be fooled by first appearances, yeah. And then King Pasenadi admits something. He said, "Oh yes," he said, "yeah, actually those are not real ascetics, they're my spies. I send them out looking like ascetics to spy on the neighbouring kingdoms, and now they're going to come back in the palace. They'll cut off their dreadlocks, put on their nice clothes and enjoy sensual pleasures." And the Buddha said, "Yes, that's the way it is sometimes. Sometimes there's something that's really made of clay that's covered in gold. Don't be fooled by the appearance of things." Yeah, so I thought it was a nice story in a way that the Buddha wasn't fooled by appearances, but encouraged people to, for us, to look, to be, assess something. So, so for you, if you see monks are not behaving appropriately, I say don't support them. If you see, and if a monk asks you for something that's not appropriate, then say, "No, that's not appropriate for a monk." Yeah, anybody can put a robe on, but really, support the ones that those that you see are keeping the vinaya, behaving correctly, and are good examples for you. And if monks are very demanding on you and asking for inappropriate things, then it's right to say no. And maybe if you're brave enough, give them some feedback. Say, according to the vinaya that I understand, monks are not supposed to ask for that. So it's good that you understand a little bit about the monks' vinaya too, what's appropriate for monks. Yeah. So there are monks who are not very well behaved, so that's up to them. But I say just don't support those that you feel are living according to what the Buddha recommended. Yeah.
So, Luang Por, out of compassion for you, we also know that you've been teaching since 9 o'clock this morning. We'd like to gratefully ask for the session to come to a close, with Luang Por allowing us to offer you our gratitude in asking for forgiveness. And thereafter, we can invite Luang Por to lead us in the sharing of verses of sharing an aspiration.
Okay, and do you know that in Pali or English?
Both.
In both, okay.
Yeah,
We'll do
so it's in the book.
Pali first and then English later, yeah. Okay, we can do that.
So I think brothers and sisters will all benefited a lot from Luang Por's very compassionate guidance today. Luang Por has been here with us since Monday evening. Actually, he was here last Tuesday on a
3 hours.
3 hours transit. And then this is his first leg of his Asian tour, just like a superstar. But we also want to also allow Lumpur some rest as he will have to catch a flight tomorrow. So we'd like to now formally request for forgiveness from Lumpur for having led us through this whole weeks of teaching, whether it's the retreat today or having gathered with us in small groups over the last few days, as well as giving us the daily evening talks in the last 3 days. Before that, we'd like to also express our gratitude to our partner NDR and friends from NDR and volunteers from NDR who have helped us through the setting up of today's program, as well as cleaning up this place last night. In case you are not aware, the army of volunteers from NDR, led by Sister Vicky, Sister Amy, Brother Teng Ping, and many others, the unsung heroes. They were here cleaning the hall in preparation of today's session. They also here very early this morning, assisting us with the preparation of the drinks, the food, and the setup as well. So as we express our anumodana, we'll also like to express our appreciation to the team at NDR. So we'd like to now call upon representatives from the Buddha Dharma Foundation, represented by Sister Serene and Sister Vicky from NDR, who go forward in front of Lumpur, and Brother Darren will lead us in the chanting.
Let's now bow down 3 times first. Bow. We stay in the bowing position while we request for the forgiveness. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Please repeat after me. Mahatere pamadena dwarataye nakatang sabbang aparadhang kamatuno phante. Mahatere pamadena dwarataye nakatang sabbang aparadhang kamatuno phante. Mahatere pamadena dwarataye nakatang sabbang aparadhang kamatuno phante.
So you can offer the flowers now. Aham kamami tomhe hipime kamitabang.
Kamama phante.
Sabetiyo vivachantu sabarogo vinasadu mate bhavadvantarayo Sukhiti yuko bhava abhivadhana silisani changuta pachayino chattaro dhamma vadanti ayuvanno sukhang balang.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Let's bow 3 times to Long Po. Bow.
Just in case you didn't understand the Pali I said, I forgive you and please forgive me.
Long Po, may we now request for the verses of sharing and aspiration?
Yes, you want somebody read out the pages?
Page 44
Okay, is that the Pali?
in Pali, and then the English is page 45.
Right, for the English in page 4, so it's 44, 45, yeah. Handamayang udisanaditana gatayo banamase imina punyakamena obajaya gunutaram acharyo pakaracha mata pita chanyataka Surveyo Chandi Maharaja Gunawandana Rapicha Brahma Maharaja Hindacha Lokapala Cha Devata Yamo Meta Manusacha Majata Verika Picha Sabbe sata sukhi hontu punyani pakatani me sukhan chati vidang dentu kipam papetavo matang imina punya kamena imina udesena cha kipahang salabe chewa Tanhupadana Chetanang Ye Sandane Hina Dhamma Yavanibanato Mamang Na Santu Sabada Yewa Yata Jato Bawe Bawe Uju Chetang Sate Panya Saleko Variyamina Maralabantu no kasang katuncha wariya sume Buddha di pawaro nato Dhammo nato warutamo Nato pacheka bodho cha Sanko nato taro mamang Teso dhamma nubhavena Maroka Sanglabantuma. Now let us chant the verses of sharing and aspiration through the goodness that arises from my practice. May my spiritual teachers, guides of great virtue, my mother, my father, and my relatives, the sun and the moon, and all virtuous leaders of the world, may the highest gods and evil forces, celestial beings, guardian spirits of the earth, and the Lord of death, may those who are friendly, indifferent, or hostile, may all beings receive the blessings of my life. May they soon attain the threefold bliss and realize the deathless through the goodness that arises from my practice and through this act of sharing. May all desires and attachments quickly cease and all harmful states of mind until I realize Nibbana in every kind of birth. May I have an upright mind with mindfulness and wisdom, austerity and vigor. May the forces of delusion not take hold, nor weaken my resolve. The Buddha is my excellent refuge. Unsurpassed is the protection of the Dhamma. The solitary Buddha is my noble guide. The Sangha is my supreme support. To the supreme power of all these, may darkness and delusion be dispelled. So closing homage now?
Yes, please,
So
Lampo.
do the closing homage. Arahang Sama Sambuddho Bhagava Buddhang Bhagavantam Abhivademi Savakato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammam Namasami Supatipanno Bhagavato Sāvaka Sangho Sangham Namami.
So with deep appreciation and gratitude, let us now pay our final 3 respects to Lampo. First bow. Second bow. Third bow. So in the traditional Buddhist way, we now rejoice in the closing of today's retreat. So the only way out is in by saying 3 sadhus very loudly. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. So thank you very much, Lampo, and thank you, everyone. In the very traditional Singaporean way, we would like to request a group photograph with Lampo.
Sorry, what?
A group photograph.
Oh, yeah. Okay. But I'd just like to say, I'm very pleased to see so many people turn out today. And yeah, I thought you all sat very well. It was a nice sort of peaceful atmosphere in here. So sadhu to you all. Yeah. And yeah, I encourage you to keep going to the practice. Yeah. Keep.
Sadhu, sadhu. So Lampo has granted us a group photograph. So we'll take a group photograph, and if you have any requisites or ropes that you'd like to offer, we would do the offering after the group photograph. And if you have got time and you can stay back and help us, it will be very grateful. You can help us with tidying up and also a little bit of washing. So thank you all so much, and may you all enjoy the bliss for the weekend. Okay, if you can come forward quickly.